So, is anything happening with our election? Any political news going on? Welcome, everyone, to another True North Report. My name is Andrew Lawton, fellow with True North, coming with an election update. And one of the stories that I must say, of all of the things that I try to predict, of all the things that I think are going to happen, I did not have Justin Trudeau blackface scandal on my political bingo card. This one admittedly came out of left field for me, but it's still an important issue. And I want to have a discussion here that goes past the memes, that goes past the jokes, of which there are many, and really get at the core of why this is such a telling story, first off, and why it's one that reveals a significant issue facing politics more broadly, not just the here and now issue facing Justin Trudeau. That's what I'm going to talk about. I've titled this episode Trudeau, Blackface, and Political Hypocrisy because it's about all three of those things and the way they engage with each other, the way they interact with each other. And I want to take a lot of your comments, feedback, questions as we do this. I know a lot of people tune into these broadcasts after the fact, which is great. Welcome to you all. But for those who are tuning in live, if you want to comment, there's a comment box over there or over there, depending on what type of device you're using. Do let me know what you're thinking. Say hello if you're tuning in, because there's a lot here. And one of the things that I've said on Twitter, and I know that Twitter is not real life, but bear with me for a moment, is that I'm not going to jump up and down and say Justin Trudeau should resign because he made a bunch of stupid mistakes as a teenager in his 20s when he was even a teacher at 29. I'm not going to do that, because my whole argument has been, whenever these stories have arisen, that you can't turn people into a one-dimensional caricature of themselves based on a snapshot from their past. I think that the most damning thing to Justin Trudeau is not that he wore blackface or brownface or blackface again or was doing minstrel shows in high school, which is pretty damning, admittedly. But the most significant part of this is that he has the audacity to subject everyone else around him to this purity test. Well, he knew full well that his own past was riddled with indiscretions for which there is no defense in 2019. And that's the biggest issue here, is that Justin Trudeau, every time he's called someone a racist for criticizing his immigration plan, every time he's called someone a bigot for making some comment that most ordinary Canadians wouldn't find bigoted, every time he or his hatchet men and women have taken aim at someone because they dare to criticize Trudeau, Trudeau knew, or should have known, that he had this in his past, this thing that would cause anyone to call him a racist if it were brought up in 2019, in the current context. And that is the worst part of here, because there is an entitlement that exists in Justin Trudeau, that everyone else has to follow these rules, and everyone else has to be a lily white, porcelain, ivory, whatever substance you want, figure with no checkered past, but he can grow and he can evolve and he can move on from these mistakes and he can do these things that don't reflect who he is now. And by the way, there is a lot of hypocrisy, not just from the Liberals on this, which I'll get to in a moment, but from both sides, because last week the Conservative leader, Andrew Scheer, said in response to a string of stories from the Liberal war room about this candidate tweeted this, and this candidate once said this, and this candidate once wrote this on a Facebook post, and this candidate once looked at a barista the wrong way. I mean, whatever the case may be. Andrew Scheer said, look, if someone apologizes and they have these things in their past, we're prepared to accept that apology and move on. That was what Andrew Scheer said. And a lot of Conservatives, I think, took that and said, yeah, absolutely, that's the way it should be. And now those same Conservatives are looking to Trudeau and saying the apology isn't enough, he needs to resign. And if you are calling for Justin Trudeau's resignation right now, if you are, and I'm not saying I am, but I'm saying if that's your approach here, you need to look at it not for the indiscretion itself, if you've taken the position that an apology is enough, but for the hypocrisy of it. And by the way, even Andrew Scheer said this when he gave, I believe it was this morning's remarks. He says, look, Justin Trudeau's past indiscretions of doing blackface and brownface, it's not just those that take away his moral ability to govern. It's the fact that he lied last night. He knew that this other photo was coming, and last night he was still evasive when asked what incidents there were for which he needed to apologize. And that's the bizarre part about here. I mean, I don't know if Trudeau saw blackface as being some sort of party trick, where it was just the regular old go-to. You know, you want to do Deo in high school? Great, blackface. You want to do an Arabian Nights party? Great, brownface. You want to do some little song and dance routine? Great, blackface. Like, it sounds like that was just his go-to. But if that is your go-to, you would know that that was your go-to. You'd know, oh my gosh, when I was younger, I used to always do blackface, and I really shouldn't have. And today, he just finished a press conference in Winnipeg. He's saying, oh, I was embarrassed, and I never told anyone about it, and I didn't bring it up when I was applying for vetting as an MP. Imagine if a Conservative candidate did not submit this sort of a photo through the vetting process. The Liberals would be jumping up and down saying, they need to resign. How dare they? You can't withhold that. They're all racist. And this is the problem, is that right now we have let political tribalism define our own ability to say whether something is right or something is wrong, which means we are, as a society, incapable of judging something on its own merits. We can only judge it based on how it fits in to whatever our partisan worldview is. So Liberals right now are saying, oh, it's not that bad. He apologized. He's moved on. We all grow and kumbaya, because that's what fits into their partisan worldview of standing by Justin Trudeau. Conservatives are saying, my goodness, how dare anyone do this? No one should do this ever. It's racist. It's horrific. It's horrible, because it fits into their partisan worldview of saying, you know what, Justin Trudeau shouldn't be around because this is what we believe as conservatives. I actually give a lot of time and credence to Jagmeet Singh here, the NDP leader, who obviously is still wanting to score the partisan points that an NDP leader would in an election against a Liberal incumbent, but because Jagmeet Singh actually has a right to be outraged about this more than a lot of the people complaining about it. He has a right to be outraged because he's literally a turban-wearing brown man who's seeing the Prime Minister, having at 29 masqueraded as a turban-wearing brown man. So Jagmeet Singh, when he speaks about racism and intolerance and all of these issues, he is a lot more positioned to weigh in on those. And it was interesting. I saw, and it sounds like I'm going all over the map here, but bear with me because there's a point that I'm going to bring this all around to. I was watching CBC earlier, and they did a bunch of, they're called streeters, which is where a reporter just goes and asks random people on the street, what do you think about this story? And they were asking people about what they thought of these pictures. And this was before the third picture was known, or the video rather, that Global News broke of him wearing a wig and in full blackface. And what I found interesting is that and they interviewed mostly young people, is that there seemed to be, and this is not scientific, and I don't know how many people they spoke to versus what they didn't show or did show, but most of the people that seemed to be of South Asian descent, of an Indian or Pakistani background or Middle Eastern background, were the ones saying, oh, it's just a costume party. I don't know, I'm not offended by it, or you shouldn't have done it. But the people that seem to be like, this is insane, you know, how dare, are white people. And I found that to be very interesting just in that little snippet on CBC. And I'm not extrapolating that to any other coverage. I'm not extrapolating that to the population at large. Just that one snippet that I saw, where a lot of the people that seemed the most outraged by this were people that were not part of the community that was most impacted by it, which is why I defer to Jagmeet Singh on the racial elements of blackface and brownface. Now, all of that being said, why I think this is such an important discussion here is because there seems to be a lot of buyer's remorse with Justin Trudeau over the feminist bona fides when he fired Jody Wilson-Raybould and then Jane Philpott as well, because people are saying, you know what, this guy said he was the captain feminist, and then he does this to us. And the Indigenous people, who as well felt like he turned his back on them because he says he's a big ally, and then all of a sudden he's not making good on these promises. And he's always said he's the racial and multicultural guy. And now people are saying, well, yes, and we didn't realize when he supported multiculturalism that it was just, you know, seeing how many cultures he himself could embody in his costumes. So all of these groups that Trudeau has claimed to be an ally of, and even in his press conference today, by the way, says he's still an ally of them, these are the people that are feeling, wait, not as advertised. And there's a reason that the conservative branding of Justin Trudeau is that line, not as advertised, which is, I think, almost more powerful than the one that was used in 2015, which is just not, I think it was just not ready. It's more powerful because, okay, he's there, he's got you, he won, but he's not the way that he was presented to you, he's not the way that he's told you he is. So to bring this all together, I am not going to say, oh my goodness, what he did was so racially insensitive and terrible, because I'm not the one that is qualified to speak about the racial undertones of blackface and brownface and the contextual elements of it. That's not me. There are people that can do it. But what I can speak to is political hypocrisy and the way that the Liberals have been trying to undermine and delegitimize, deperson, and cancel as many Conservative candidates as they've been able to. And this has not just been an accident. This has been part of the core Liberal strategy. All of the stories in the last week, 2 weeks, in which Andrew Scheer has had to defend a candidate or fire a candidate have really been because of the Liberal war room. They've got mounds and mounds and mounds of opposition research. This candidate's tweet from 1947, this candidate's Facebook comment from whenever, this blog post, this photo, this video, and they've been getting, whenever Andrew Scheer is campaigning with someone, a local MP or some local representative to post this, and then it gains a little bit of foot traffic on Twitter, and then eventually Andrew Scheer speaks out about it, and every single day the Conservatives are playing defense, trying to say, no, our candidates are not racist, they're not homophobes, they're not this, or are not that. And this has been the Liberal strategy, is to take aim at the Conservatives by calling them terrible people. And this is horrible. It is horrible, it is war, it is bloody, it is cutthroat, and it subjects very good people to these social media mobs because they are pawns in this broader political fight. And I'll talk about my own experience in this sense a little bit later on. But this has been the entire Liberal strategy, to deperson and cancel culture is what it's called here, all of these other candidates. And now their own Prime Minister, their own leader, who has been overseeing this strategy, has had more significant, more high profile, and more visual examples of what would be called racist if some Conservative candidate in Quebec or some Green candidate in BC had done it. But for him, it's a learning opportunity, it's a path to growth, it's something he can move on from, and something that he's learned a lot about. Because everything to Justin Trudeau has always been a teachable moment, which is, oh, we can learn from this, we can grow from this, we can learn, we can grow, all of this stuff. And this is fascinating, that to him, everything is a learning opportunity. To everyone else, it's evidence of being racist, evidence of being a hypocrite, evidence of being unworthy of public office. Remember, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, Andrew Scheer getting that 15-year-old clip of him arguing against same-sex marriage. That 15-year-old clip proves he's a bigot. Justin Trudeau, 3 photos of him in blackface and brownface, and oh, well, he's still an ally and he's used this to grow and learn. And you have never seen so many people twist themselves into knots to say that something that would be reprehensible were it from a Conservative candidate is no big deal because Justin Trudeau has been an ally and been supportive of diversity and has done all this other stuff. And Harjit Sajjan, the defense minister, again, a very well-decorated Sikh man, a turban-wearing Sikh who was literally a Sikh warrior. That was the reputation he had when he was in the Canadian Armed Forces. Was, I believe it was an RCMP detective. It might have been Vancouver Police. I can't remember offhand. But he was doing a CBC radio interview in the morning saying, yeah, it's hurtful, but he wants to define Justin Trudeau by the man he is, the man that Minister Sajjan knows. And by the way, I think that is the way that we should all view these things when they come up. There was a Conservative candidate a week ago, maybe a week and a half ago, who was a young guy, I think he's 29 or something, 28 or 29, and he had a tweet from 19 where he called a friend in a back and forth Twitter exchange. I don't know if I'm allowed to say the word. So, I mean, it's not TV, but a FAG, it was just FAG. And this was, again, an indiscreet moment, the kind of thing that most people who are 19, especially 19-year-old boys or young men, would talk about. But again, in the digital age, there's a record, there's a catalog, there's all of these things. And he's not given the benefit of the doubt by the Liberals. He's not given the benefit of the doubt by the media. He is given basically a rebranding of his existence as being that of a homophobe. And it was the Liberal MPs that were tweeting saying, oh my goodness, this cannot stand, he must resign. His apology is not enough. That was what was tweeted by one of the MPs. His apology is not enough. Now, I haven't checked that MP's Twitter account, but I bet you they are talking about how brave it is that Justin Trudeau has apologized and is owning up to his mistakes and is prepared to move forward. And this is why what's happening now is so disgusting. It's not because Justin Trudeau screwed up on a number of occasions. It is because the Liberals have created and fostered and fueled this cancel culture for everyone other than them. But when their leader is in the crosshairs, it is insensitive, or the one thing that I saw, petty politics, to talk about it. I've seen from a number of liberal partisans this called petty politics, smear politics, dirty politics, mudslinging. The only mud is the stuff that Trudeau was rubbing on his face. He immersed himself in mud, for crying out loud. But again, if you criticize that as a conservative, oh, you're just, it's negative politics. But if the roles are reversed and the Liberals are the ones driving it, they are being the protectors of Canada. The hypocrisy is the biggest sin in all of this. The hypocrisy is the biggest sin. Now, again, when I saw Trudeau give his press conference, I saw someone who was saying all of the right things. And you may think I'm being soft, you may think I'm being deferential, you may think whatever you want, but he said all the right things. He didn't try to excuse it, he didn't try to shuffle around it, he didn't try to revise things. Last night he was very weak. Last night he was leaving himself open to really basic questions. And then this morning, when this third incident, the video that Global News published emerged, one thing that I noted, and if you saw his press conference, you would have noted this as well, he was asked 3 times. He was asked 3 times by reporters, how many times have you done this? And he wouldn't answer. He didn't answer on any occasion. But he was asked 3 times, how many incidents, how many occasions have you put on blackface? And he said, oh, well, I'm aware that it's terrible and blah, 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 blah. And when it was being asked the 3rd time, his press secretary was actually shouting over the reporter, saying, next question, next question, next. I think she shouted it 4 or 5 times. I've got the footage of it. And basically trying to move on. So Trudeau does not want to answer the question of how much of a go-to this was for him. But even then, he was saying all the right things. He was contrite. He was apologetic. Even if you don't take it seriously, there is nothing that he could have said that was better. He didn't try to excuse it. It was, yep, this is me. This is what happened. So we're back to the primary issue being that such an apology would not fly from anyone else. And of course, now he's being asked about hypotheticals. Oh, well, what if a candidate of yours did this? And he's saying, well, everything's going to be on a case-by-case basis. But the Liberals have not been looking on a case-by-case basis. They've been trying to paint everyone with the same brush. And discourse itself is what suffers. I'm going to read a couple of messages that we have coming in here. Sheila writes, in a nutshell, Justin Trudeau says it's not his fault it happened because he was born into a privileged life. That also explains a lot more. For instance, why he doesn't understand living in the middle class means living without nannies, being taxed to death, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, the privilege thing is interesting because we heard this in the press conference today, him talking about how, I was blind because of my privilege, and I didn't see that this was racist because of my privilege. So he's still feeding into this climate that is going to cause other people to be thrown under the bus for this, because privilege is the almighty sin now. To have privilege, to have a life with privilege, is just this thing from which you cannot escape. Fern writes he's going to get back in because he has bought everything he can to make it happen. What has happened to common sense? I want to say that the media on this has been, I think, about as good as you can expect it. Now, I think the real test of the media will be whether the media follows this story through. Remember, this was broken by an American outlet. This was broken by Time Magazine, which is a weird one because I didn't even think Time Magazine broke news, even in the US. And We don't know. Did they give this? Did the source give this to a Canadian publication and they passed it over? We know that Global had the video that it published this morning since the beginning of the week, and they said, oh, we were trying to authenticate and verify. So Global was sitting on this. They say trying to verify, and I have no reason to suspect otherwise, but then they rush it out once it's a big story. And the Liberal Party confirms that, yes, in fact, it is real. Faustina, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, says a lot of people have lost their jobs for much less. Well, certainly, and I mean, candidates have lost their entire ability to run for a lot less. And the reason this is such a sore spot for me, if you've read about me, you'll know this. I mean, I was subjected to the Liberal war room when I ran as a candidate a little over a year ago in Ontario's provincial election. And things that are out of context, things that don't reflect who I am today, things that arguably I would say don't even reflect who I am or who I was then. These things that are brought up and no explanation, no acknowledgement, and no understanding of who I am today matters when you are a cog in what the Liberal war room has determined is the enemy, which in the case of my former candidacy was just being a part of this conservative machine. And it's vicious and it's impersonal in some way because they don't care about you, but it's personal because you're the one that has to deal with that branding. You're the one that has to deal with how you're being tarnished. And again, I think of those days, which were very difficult days for my family, for me personally, and think of, oh my goodness, little did I know that if you're a Liberal and you get busted having made inappropriate comments, having posed for inappropriate photos, whatever, if you're a Liberal, you get to just stand up there and say, oh yeah, well, I was blinded by my privilege. I should have said that last year. Oh, I was blinded by my privilege. No, and in my case, look, I take responsibility, you know, because they found decade-old tweets of mine as well that did not look very good. Attempts at humor, things that I posted when I was in the midst of quite a nasty mental health battle that didn't reflect who I was, where I was behaving in a very reckless way. And I see that candidates are being thrown through the ringer right now. And this is going to be the way that elections are fought. This is how elections are won or lost now. By however many candidates a party has left standing by the end of the campaign. And at this rate, the Conservatives, the Liberals, the NDP, they can all have 338 candidates. And by the time you pick off all the ones that once tweeted the wrong thing, we're going to have just 4 candidates left on election day. And it's just going to be a brawl between those 4. And good people are forced out of politics or never get into politics because they know they can never emerge as lily white as the media requires them to be. And that's wrong. And there's a media side of this that I don't have time to explore today, but a media part of this that needs to be understood, which is that this stuff never comes out about politicians who are seeking re-election. Because politicians who are seeking re-election have already been elected to something. Politicians who are seeking re-election, you'd presume, have already been vetted. So why was this not revealed earlier on in the process? Why was it not? Who was not looking into Trudeau? Now, I take some of the blame for this. I didn't find it either. But I also think that we have journalists that are right now on full-time beats to cover misinformation that's supposedly influencing the election. Yet, for some reason, in the last 4 years and the last 11 years since he's become a member of Parliament, no one has unearthed photos that in one case, I think it was Robert Jago in Canadaland, he found a new photo, the one of Trudeau standing in between 2 genuine Sikhs who are not in brownface, but who are actually Indian gentlemen. And that photo he found just by looking through an archived copy of a newsletter from the school. And it was from that same Arabian Nights party. And he found this, it sounded like just in the last 18 hours. So no one has vetted Justin Trudeau. No one has vetted him. No one has subjected him to the rule that candidates are supposed to go through. And Trudeau himself did not disclose that this was there when he was seeking the nomination, the Liberal nomination in Papineau, for which he eventually was elected before becoming the Liberal leader and so on. So again, we have this question of why the rules are different for him than they are for other people. And we know the answer to this. But I would actually, rather than saying this incident should be the end of Justin Trudeau, What I would like to see is for this incident to be the end of the culture of delegitimization and debasement of people who have made mistakes in their past. I'm prepared to accept Trudeau's apology if the new reality of our political discourse in Canada, in North America, in the West can be that we allow people to define themselves based on who they are today, not who they were in a yearbook photo or a tweet or some time capsule. I mean, that's the whole point. I will give Trudeau a pass if he and the Liberals promise that they will not only run campaigns around trying to slander and malign people for not always being mature, responsible grown-ups. And by the way, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think we're going to see that change occur between now and the election, which is just in a week or a month and 2 days. But that would be what I would absolutely love to have happen of this, is an end to what I've termed and what other people have termed cancel culture. And remember, the revolution will always devour its own, whether it's Me Too, which eventually becomes so big that some of the big feminist allies are taken down, and whether it's anti-racism activists who eventually are revealed that, oh, they've said something or did something racist, or Trudeau who checks off all these boxes, and then eventually something like this comes up and people have this existential crisis. Whatever the case is, perhaps we can say, all right, maybe it's time we do embrace forgiveness. Maybe it's time we do allow for growth, accept growth, and encourage growth. I mean, should we not be, as a society, encouraging and celebrating the idea that someone can do stupid things and then eventually grow up, mature out of them, and go on to be the Prime Minister of Canada, go on to do something productive with their life? That candidate in Brampton, yeah, he once said stupid things with his friends, but now he's been a great advocate on all sorts of issues. That Andrew Scheer once took a Catholic position on an issue in the House of Commons, but now he's doing all of these other things. That every single person has a past that is imperfect, that would not stand up to the modern scrutiny lens. That insight, that nuance is completely absent right now. So what I would like to see happen is not going to happen, which means, can we at least resist the urge to make this about political tribalism? I've got a great many issues with Justin Trudeau. Top of the list is not that he donned blackface and brownface. To me, the blackface and brownface are symptoms of a bigger issue that has a lot more to do with policy than it does about the incidents itself, and that is that he continuously decides to set other rules for those around him than the ones he has to live by. And I talked about this in a video not long ago with Andrew Scheer, whereas Justin Trudeau in 2011 made the exact same point that Andrew Scheer did, which was, I'm personally opposed to legislate it, which is what Andrew Scheer said. I'm personally opposed, but I'm not going to legislate it. But for Justin Trudeau, he can be a feminist and say that. For Andrew Scheer, it makes him an unconscionable bigot to say that. Different rules for him than there are for those around him. Conservative candidates who have a past should resign. Andrew Scheer has to shoulder them and pay his penance. Justin Trudeau can apologize and make it into a learning opportunity for everyone involved. This is the grand hypocrisy on full display. And no one can say that politics is better when we force everyone to be defined by who they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But if you're going to use that mechanism to define others, you have to be prepared to deal with it when it turns itself at you, which is the position in which we find our Prime Minister right now. Now, one thing I will say, and this is a bit of an announcement, is that True North has been covering the election, and I've actually been about to start a cross-country tour, talking to people around the country, talking to candidates, talking about the key issues, uncovering the key issues. But there's something that needs to happen now, and we are in the process, as I speak, this has been something we've been doing today, of getting on the Liberal bus. So my goal is to join the Liberal campaign, not the Liberal campaign itself, but the media that are following around Justin Trudeau, to ask the tough questions and make sure that he is held to account, not for past indiscretions, but for the hypocrisy factor that we're seeing from the Liberals. Now, this is not cheap, and this is the problem right now. We've got to fundraise for it, even beyond what we've fundraised to cover the election. And the reason for that is that to join the Liberal campaign bus or the campaign plane or that of any party, you have to pay. You've got to cover your own costs, and it's not inexpensive, bus fare and plane travel. But it's important because this is the only way to get access to what the Prime Minister or the Liberal leader in this case is doing. So we're doing this at True North. We're working it out right now as we speak, actually. I've been in contact with the Liberal campaign. We're trying to make this happen starting this weekend. But we do need your help to cover the cost of doing this because it's not going to be cheap. I know Candace tweeted about it. I've tweeted about it as well. There's a link in the description box over there. If you head on over to tnc.news, there is a donate button and you can chip in. And because we are a registered charity, you can actually get a tax receipt as well for your contribution. So do head on over and give us a hand if you can. We'll have more as the campaign goes on. Thank you. God bless and good day, Canada. For True North, I'm Andrew Lawton.